Welcome back to Legacy Labs. Today we're going to talk about why students struggle in the classroom and why difficulty is not always the same thing as inability. That distinction matters because a student can understand parts of a skill and still break down when the task asks them to put everything together. So they might be able to repeat the model, they might be able to answer correctly with help, they might be able to recognize pieces of the lesson in isolation. But once the structure changes, once the task asks them to hold sequence, memory, timing, and pressure all at one time, the pattern can collapse. And when that happens, the problem may not be that the student cannot learn. The problem may be that the learning structure is misreading what's actually breaking. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Because sometimes the student is not failing the material. Sometimes the structure is failing to carry the student through the task. So the surface problem, this is what it looks like. So a student keeps getting stuck on the same kind of task. The lesson has already been explained. They have already practiced it before. They might even be able to do part of it with help. But when they're expected to do the full task independently, the same mistakes return. From the outside, this can look like the student just doesn't understand, but structurally, that not be the full story. A student may know parts, they might be able to recognize the pieces, but when what they lose is the pattern though. And once the pattern collapses, the system often labels a student before it diagnoses the structure. So what schools usually try. So teachers usually try more practice, more reminders, more correction, more worksheets, more repetition, slower explanation, a simpler version of the same task, and sometimes those things do help. But if the structure of the task is the real problem, more repetition can reinforce the same breakdown. So a better question is not only did we explain this again, a better question would be what is the student being asked to carry? Because if the student is being asked to carry sequence, memory, timing, pressure, and confidence at the same time, the issue might not be the content. The issue could be the container. So the structural break. So the structural break is this: a student can know all the parts and still lose the pattern. That can happen when the task moves faster than the student's ability to stabilize the sequence. The task might be too large, the rhythm might be too quick, the support may disappear too early. The environment may add pressure. The feedback may arrive after the breakdown instead of before it. So the student is not just answering a question; they're trying to hold the system together. And if that system is unstable, a student collapses at the exact point where where the lesson expected independence, and that's where learning breaks. So here's a simple example. So we have Eli. A student named Eli is working on blending sounds in simple words. He can hear the sound separately. He can repeat it after the teacher, and he can identify the parts. But when he has to blend the sounds quickly and independently, he reverses the order or loses the sequence. On the surface, Eli does not know how to blend, but the structural read as what is this task asking Eli to carry? He has to hold the sounds, keep them in order, blend them, maintain attention, manage pressure, and produce an answer. That's a lot happening at one time. So the problem might not be that Eli doesn't know anything. The problem could be that it's just the system's asking him to carry too many structures at the same time. So the learning pathway needs to be rebuilt around sequence, rhythm, and memory support. So the narrative architecture read. So from a narrative architecture view, we start with the pulse. So the pulse is going to be what the student is trying to carry. So in Eli's case, the pulse is not just say the word correctly. The deeper skill is hold the parts in order long enough to create meaning. That is what the task is really asking him to do. Pressure. What tests the student? Speed, memory load, being watched, the fear of being wrong, too many steps at once. The moment support gets removed, pressure shows us where the structure is weak. The inheritance. What does the student already bring to the task? Prior lessons, past mistakes, learned frustration, the classroom rhythm, anxiety around correction, maybe even a habit of guessing when overwhelmed. The student does not enter the task blank. They bring the memory of previous attempts, and that memory affects how they respond when pressure rises. So motif, what keeps repeating? For Eli, maybe Eli reverses the sounds. Maybe he pauses at the same point. Maybe he guesses when the task speeds up. Maybe he just gets it with support and then loses it on his own. That repeated mistake is not random. It's a diagnostic signal. It shows us where the structure is breaking. Memory. So memory is what does the student retain, lose, reverse, or fail to retrieve? And that is the key. A student can know something in isolation and still lose it in sequence. That doesn't mean that the knowledge is absent. It might mean that the retrieval structure is unstable. And rhythm. How does the lesson move? Instruction, model, practice, correction, independence, feedback. If the rhythm moves too quickly or support disappears before the skill has stabilized, the student might collapse before the learning has had time to hold. So the diagnostic is this: a student may be failing the material, but the structure may be failing to carry the student through the task. So better questions to ask. So instead of asking, can the student do this? We're going to ask different questions. We're going to ask, what is the task asking the student to carry? Where does the pattern break? What pressure appears at the moment of failure? What support disappears too early? What does the student know in isolation but loses in sequence? What part of the environment is adding friction? What memory does the student need to hold? What structure would make the task processable? Those questions are stronger because they don't reduce the student to the mistake. They treat the mistake as evidence, and once the mistake becomes evidence, a teacher can diagnose the pathway instead of just correcting the answer. So the strategy shift. The strategy shift is simple. Stop treating every learning struggle as an ability problem. Start treating struggles as a signal about structure. Reduce the task load, stabilize the sequence, slow the rhythm, add memory support before removing help. That doesn't mean that we're lowering expectations for the student. It just means that we're going to build a better pathway, because a student doesn't only need the right content. A student needs structure to help the content as well. So if you guys want to check out the Legacy Labs application guide on here on why students struggle when structure mysteries a problem, I break that down way more in detail in the article. And in the paid section, the strategy guide, there's a guide on how to actually rebuild the learning pathway. So you can map it out, diagnose the student, and fix the pathway for the student. So I'll link those in the description. And if you guys have any questions, you can feel free to reach out. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.